good evening to all our viewers. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Samantha Castle, and I'm the Senior Manager for Alumni Relations at the University of Pretoria. Welcome to another exciting edition of our online alumni events. Today's discussion is the first in the LeadUP Alumni Thought Leadership Series, which brings together a panel of topic experts, including UP alumni. As you are aware that many of the businesses across South Africa are reeling the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Business owners are having to make very difficult decisions as they try and save the livelihoods of the employees and their own. Today, we invite you to listen to 5 leading UP academics as they deliberate on turnaround strategy and business rescue for struggling businesses. But before we delve into the discussion, I'd like to welcome our Vice Chancellor and Principal, Professor Tawana Kupe, to give a warm welcome to you, our alumni. Over to you, Prof. Kupe.
A very good evening to all our alumni and those who have joined us this evening. This is a wonderful occasion for us to present an esteemed panel of UP alumni to discuss these very difficult issues in this very difficult time, where the economic problems cause businesses to be stressed and distressed, and therefore whether we can find out what strategies we can use to get out of this situation. Allow me also to inform you that proudly our Faculty of Economic and Management Sciences, where some of our esteemed panelists are professors and academics, turned 100 this year. This is their centenary. It's a leading faculty, produces some top people in various business sectors. Second, I would like also to inform you that our business school continues to do very well. We were ranked 38 in the Financial Times for executive education, and this has been happening for over so many years. Leading business school in South Africa and Africa will also make an input into how we can deal with this very difficult situation. I would also like to acknowledge UP Center for Entrepreneurship, which is in the Faculty of Economic and Management Sciences. Professor Antonitis, who's a panelist, is a person that is responsible for what I'm acknowledging, and him and his colleagues, is the launch of the National SMME Support Portal for struggling businesses. At UP, if we can bring knowledge and our skills and expertise to bear in improving people's lives, business sectors, and society as a whole, we do. I'd also like to encourage people to join our forthcoming discussions. On the 23rd, for example, we were discussing on the about what the budget might bring. Will it bring relief to struggling businesses and our economy in general and people in general? Or the day after the budget is presented on the 25th, a post-budget analysis with some of the top experts. Allow me to end by saying, again, to acknowledge our Alumni Relations Office for leading in creating these particular events, and also last but not least, a very warm welcome. Enjoy this show. We love your support. This is a great university. It's going to transform our lives, sectors, the continent, and make a contribution to the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Kupe. As I conclude, I encourage all our alumni to make sure you sign up to our award-winning UP Alumni Connect platform and gain access to job opportunities, internships, and news while networking with fellow alumni. Remember, this is a live stream event, so don't forget to drop us a comment to let us know that you're here. In addition, feel free to ask questions by tweeting and using our hashtag UP Alumni. Once again, thank you for joining us. We look forward to your comments and online engagement.
I'll quickly introduce myself. My voice and focus are more on the entrepreneurial space, embracing the SMME sector. And as we know, the entire
appears that we can't connect. I'm going to go back to the studio and see if we can deal with some of these connectivity issues. But perhaps my colleague Sam will be able to start us off. All right. I see that Professor Alex, I suppose he's interested. Professor, if you can come on and introduce yourself, connectivity issues. Professor.
Thank you. Can you all hear me? Okay. Thank you, Aubrey. As mentioned, I'm the head of the Department of Business Management, and my voice this evening and focus are more on the entrepreneurial space, embracing the SME sector. And as we know, the entire entrepreneurial ecosystem is negatively affected in a very short time frame, and in each and every contributing element. No business plan projected the harsh impact of COVID. So we entered a phase where a significant portion of our entrepreneurs have to rethink and restart business, revamp business models, and for many pivot into new unknown market areas. It's also a rather new application of the design thinking process, framing not only new offerings, but also new business architecture. And in a positive context, we have to discuss certain positive things this evening as well. We believe this will spell more innovation and linked market creation. Looking forward.
Thank you very much, and apologies for the technical delays we're experiencing. I think, Aubrey, with the great thing about working from home and working anywhere is that it comes with its own challenges in connectivity. My name is Moretz. I'm going to try and help moderate this panel while we work through those technical difficulties. So we've just heard from Professor Alex. We are now going to move over to our next speaker, who's just going to give us the introductory points. So, Ms. Reba, if you can share with us your thoughts.
Good evening. My name is Robela, and my key focus is in strategy, particularly on organizational behavior and even more specifically sense making, because I believe there's a necessity for people to think about how we actually make sense of strategy, how we make sense of business. And this is a pretty chaotic situation that we're dealing with. It's very, it's unknown, and for a lot of people, very stressful. So it's very important that we try and practice sensibility during chaos, just that develop that attitude of stepping back a little bit to try and understand what is actually going on within the business, try to make sense of it, and of course, try to come up with solutions. Secondly, there's often this misconception that disruption is bad. So it's not necessarily bad. With sense-making literature, it tells us that it's important to break down sense, to break down any problems that you might have, and then try to come up with solutions. And very important is the concept of audience awareness. I think it goes without saying that there's going to be a lot of change. People are going to change. Our consumers are going to change. And their priorities are going to change, their intentions are going to change, and their behavior is going to change. So it's important when trying to understand failure, disruption, and so forth, that we actually understand ourselves as businesses and try to understand the audience to see how can we actually change the way we do things in order to actually meet the needs of the consumers. So yeah, that's me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Dr. Rachel Moretz.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Moretz, and I work specifically in strategy for big corporates. As we've seen now with uncertainty, even with our webinar, we are confronted by uncharted and rough seas that were caused by this COVID-19 and the lockdowns globally. So as businesses, we should find ourselves checking our compasses and returning to the first principles of strategy. You cannot steer your ship without a clear strategic intent. Even though it becomes difficult to plan for the unforeseen and for the long term, our decisions will still bear long-term repercussions. And disruption in our markets cause businesses today to rethink their strategic assumptions and to pivot their strategy to a new horizon. So we need a flexible strategy to navigate the sea. We cannot be fixed in our organizational identities. We cannot be fixed in a deliberate strategy. We need to be flexible in these times. We also need to think creatively about how we strategize. what we strategize about, and also how we implement our strategy. So this is the time for being creative and innovative and looking at the disruption. Disruption is no longer a fringe issue in business, but it has become one of the mainstream issues in business today.
Absolutely, on so many different levels, we see that in today's business world. Dr. Wesley?
Well, welcome everyone. There's no doubt that this pandemic and the lockdown fulfills the hallmarks of what we call a black swan event, which is often inappropriately rationalized after the fact with the benefit of hindsight. We need to currently use the rescue and insolvency tools available to distressed businesses, then look to recovery in the medium term by adopting turnaround strategies. The competitive landscape, like my colleague Dr. Moretz has explained, has now changed, and therefore our strategies must adapt. Fragile business models will find it difficult to respond, while resilient ones will endure. Anti-fragile business models will reap the benefit of these disruptions post-lockdown. I hope through our discussion tonight that we can bring some clarity to this very volatile situation and how turnaround management can assist businesses.
Wonderful, thank you for that. Professor Marius?
Yes, good evening. I'm very happy to participate in this discussion, and I hope we'll turn it into a discussion quickly. And I'm coming from the point of view of distress thinking. So for most businesses, we know that it is not if you are going to experience distress, it is when. Now with COVID, we are all small businesses, big businesses, all have been dumped into different turnaround situations, and that's what we need to try and understand. And then the question is, how will we respond? So we are mid in this turnaround situation. Every single business is unique, so we cannot generally put the rules, but there are overall rules that can govern how we can respond, and that's where I think I can make a contribution tonight. Thank you.
Fantastic. So now we move on to the first poll of the evening. And if you saw the holding slide at the beginning of our session, our question and answer sessions, as well as our polls tonight, we're going to be running through a platform called slido.com. Once you go to the website and you enter the event code LeadUP 10 June, you'll be able to post any of your questions or comments. You can choose to address it to any of the panelists for tonight. And you can also take part in our polls, the first one of which is now up on the screen. So if you could choose a topic that you would like to learn more about: business rescue, innovation, business strategy and finance, management consulting, or hopefully none of the above, then please let us know in the poll, slido.com LeadUP 10 June. And after this first session of the moderated panel, we will then announce the results. And so jumping into the panel, and you'll excuse me, I'm not the expert, but looking at our panelists tonight, what do you feel is the business principles that should govern our thinking at the moment? And Alex, I'm going to start with you, if you don't mind.
Marius, I think the best person for this is actually Rachel, Dr. Moretz. It's a field more on the strategy side. And I will latch onto a discussion in terms of the entrepreneurial side of business principles just after that.
Fantastic. Rachel?
In terms of strategy, Marius, it's important that we do not discard the strategy that we have for the future. Our time horizons might change, because in strategy we always say that you need to plan for the longer term future, but that might change. So you might have a shorter time horizon, but as far as direction setting is concerned, a strategy is still very critical. So we might find that we still have our top-driven strategic intent. So that still needs to be in place. Your company needs to know where it's going. This is not a time to be unsure of what your direction is, but you should also accommodate a more emergent approach to strategy, where strategy can evolve from a bottom-up approach as a business principle. So you'll have more internal experimentation, you've got more autonomy for your managers, and you allow them to experiment with new solutions and new ways of doing things within the guidance of your overall strategic direction and strategic intent.
Perfect. So I think on the main question for tonight, something that a lot of businesses are facing at the moment, what is business rescue and what does it actually entail? Who would maybe like to start on that question?
Yeah, maybe Wesley is the best person to answer the question, but I can introduce it to say that business rescue is a formal process that has been instituted to address distressed businesses. It is slightly different from turnaround, where we do informal processes and apply techniques early in the distress phase. Business rescue is almost like intensive care actions that we take to really try to save a business that is in distress. I don't know whether you want to add to that, Wes.
Yes, well, I think that kind of helps distinguish it from the overall theme of turnaround, is that business rescue is one of, you would go for formal turnaround, which is business rescue as a last resort. Typically, you're not going to jump into rescue as soon as the first signs of distress, because it's typically a hostile environment. It's creditor driven. And what a lot of directors need to be aware of is that once you enter the business rescue process, you relinquish all your control to a business rescue practitioner. So I think there's also an important distinction that needs to be made here between business rescue and liquidation. While both of them are insolvency procedures, rescue is aimed at trying to recover the business. That's the primary purpose behind it. While liquidation is solely targeted at winding down the business. Now, in a lot of cases, a company might not be able to be rescued or returned to its full operation, and parts of it might be sold off in rescue, or it could be even wound down in rescue. We've seen that in some cases. But the major distinction between these two procedures is that in rescue, the aim is recovery, and in liquidation, it's about winding down.
Perfect. So there's a few examples that we see at the moment. Obviously, the most famous of those, South African Airways. We know Comair through Kalula.com and British Airways are busy undergoing the business rescue at the moment. So what are they really looking to do, and what changes would they normally look to affect in situations like these?
Maybe let me take this question for the start and then pass over to Professor Pretorius. You know, it's a great example of two companies, SAA and Comair, both in business rescue, but for entirely different reasons. Whereas SAA, we all know, has got operational issues that have led to its underperformance over a number of years, and where the rescue practitioners are trying to fix the performance of the business. Comair, on the other hand, has entered business rescue as a result of the lockdown. It was a company that was performing relatively well before the lockdown, and because of the lockdown, they found themselves now in distress. Essentially, what they're trying to do here is buy themselves time, and that's one of the advantages that business rescue offers businesses, is it can buy yourself a bit of time, breather room to weather the storm. What you do need to realize, and something I did mention earlier, is that it's still a creditor-driven process. So while you can buy yourself, the first 30 days or 60 days by just filing for business rescue, it is going to end up at a vote of creditors whether they're going to extend the process further. So if you are in a situation where you can negotiate with your creditors, it's an open forum, everyone is willing to support the business, then try avoid formal turnaround. Business rescue, try to do it informally with various means. But if you are in a situation where you are facing difficulties with various stakeholders and struggling to, or you have multiple creditors, then business rescue can organize that and through a structured process. Professor Pretorius, I don't know if you want to add to that.
No, not really, Wes. You're covering it well. I think the big thing is that people must realize when they have distress, and in the Act it is clearly stated that if you cannot pay your creditors, or now or in the next 6 months, you have financial distress and therefore you have to file for business rescue if you believe that you have a reasonable prospect of saving the business. If not, then you probably have to go for the liquidation option. So that's how the thing works. So for me, it is about understanding the distress. What is the distress in your business? Do you still have a business that you can save? Now, after COVID, we know that people they are executing business activities, but they don't have businesses anymore. But the directors often do not want to acknowledge that. So we have a very complex problem that we are facing for people to make a choice of, am I trying to turn the business around? Should I go for business rescue? Should I require the safety of the net that business rescue is giving us and the protection? So it is quite complex, but you have to first understand what is your distress level of your business. And for that, we would apply techniques, simple techniques like a fire assessment that will quickly tell you what is the level of the business before we can even start to make choices. Remember, strategy is about making the choices. So where are you going? What are you going to do? And what are you not going to do?
So you mentioned the term there, a fire strategy. I'd love to dig a little bit more. Just what does that mean for us in a quick minute?
Well, it is a fire assessment. It's almost like it's maybe associated with the concept of the fire sale. It is a quick thing. When people phone me and they say my business is in trouble or in distress, I ask them questions over the telephone. And there's 12 questions which convert into a score on a score sheet, and that tells you where you are and what you can do now. What is the severity of your distress, for example? What is the causality of the distress that is acknowledged in that process, so that you can understand? It's about sense making. Do you understand what happened to your business? Because the business that you had before COVID is probably not the business that you have today. And very few people understand that. They still want to start up their old businesses. Those old businesses are probably not going to work. You have to restart. You have to think entrepreneurially now about where are you going? Do you still have that business? So the fire assessment is just the starting point of that. And I'm sure, Professor Antonitis, that we can make that available on the Sme Portal site for people to apply. And I can help them with the interpretations if it's necessary. It's not a problem.
That's fantastic. Now, talking about SMME, what legislation governs business rescue in South Africa? It's obviously it is a formal governmental mandated process. And what are some of the key elements that actually bring out this legislation?
Okay, I'll take this one for the start. Well, first of all, business rescue can be found. All the details of business rescue can be found in the Companies Act of 2008 in Chapter 6. It's a fairly straightforward piece of legislation. It's not too lengthy or complicated, and I think it's worthwhile for any director, or actually every director should be familiar with the process of business rescue. And the primary reason for that is, first of all, understanding beforehand what are the pros and cons to going into business rescue, as well as using it as part of a greater turnaround strategy. Remember that a lot of people have this misnomer that business rescue is this magic wand that's just going to solve all the issues in the business. And unfortunately, it's not the case. it is highly, companies that file for business rescue have limited resources, are usually in quite a thick of conflict with their stakeholders, and it's quite a process for this business rescue practitioner to even make sense of what's going on, let alone start implementing any turnaround strategy. So the business rescue process should form part of a greater turnaround strategy, bearing in mind that turnarounds of any company takes in the vicinity of 3 to 5 years. So what you want to do is you want to implement your turnaround strategy. If you need to, use business rescue as a starting point to settle the creditors, get a base plan in place, and then take it from there and work from that forwards. So what you want to do is limit your time in rescue as much as possible. Like I said before, it's quite a hostile environment. It's very expensive to operate. Good business rescue practitioners are not cheap, and they don't come alone. They come with a full team of experts ranging from legals to financiers to CAs, the works. So that whole team comes in, and it can be quite a drain on a ready distressed business.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. So I want to take a quick break. We've just finished our first poll. So what topic would you like to learn about most? And if I just look at the results for that poll, we have 57% saying they want to learn more about business rescue. We've got 53% on business strategy, then innovation, and then management consulting. So we'll use all of that information to help us guide future sessions where we can try and really delve into each of those topics specifically. And we'll ask our esteemed panelists to share more information post this event that will help our viewers tonight. So now we move on to the second poll for the night before we delve into our Q&A. Would you like to learn more about the National SMME Support Portal? We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail now as we move forward. But that is our second poll for tonight. Our first question that I want to delve into, and Reba, I'm really looking to you to start us out here, is from the Fatswa. So which skills and resources should businesses focus on in order to be more successful post-COVID-19?
Thank you. So as I indicated in my introduction, it's the importance of breaking down sense, or the importance of actually valuing disruption. So I think one of the key skills that we need to think about is critical thinking, and for a large extent, I think creativity. Obviously, now we are faced with a situation where things have changed, nothing is normal anymore. And so we need to come up with creative ideas, and we need to come up with ways of actually addressing opportunities or seeing opportunities slightly differently. So I'd say critical thinking, and I would definitely say creativity, and definitely adaptability. I think it's a very important skill to have, especially in this period of time, because everything has changed. So you need to adapt. You need to think of new ways of doing things. You need to think about the fact that consumers see things differently. Their value has changed in terms of what it is that they're prioritizing. So you need to be adaptable in terms of your business processes and how you do things. And of course, with adaptability is the willingness to change. So the willingness to change your thinking, how you do things, and in terms of the resources required, I think that would definitely be determined by the type of business that you have. But I think you need to obviously, if you're thinking about COVID, is the development of skill around tech, around communication, around building relationships. So it's basically about trying to see things differently and trying to tap into almost the sense making of your consumers to try and see how do they view things. And once you have awareness, or you've created awareness around your consumers, what they value, look at your competitors, see how they make sense, because that will also determine your actions, what you need to do. So I don't know if I've answered that question correctly, or if anybody wants to weigh in.
That is a really good answer to the question. Thank you for that. Panelists, anybody else who wants to add on to that statement, or Can I maybe ask Professor Alex, what comes first in new market development? Is it design thinking or is it strategy? Professor Alex, you're muted.
It depends on a number of things, so I'll quickly explain what it is without opening a toolbox of theories. Design thinking is essentially a creation process. It's a creativity, as Reba mentioned, it's a skill, it's something you can learn. And it's customer-centric thinking. And it starts with a problem area. Let's make it very practical. You have a restaurant, you closed for 3 months now. What can I do? So that's your problem. And design thinking is a process where you go through a number of iterative steps, guiding you through the creative thinking and critical thinking, and essentially co-create with your customer. That's the unique side of it. And it links directly with emergent strategy. So it's integrated, and I think I can expand a bit on the strategy side of it, especially on the disruptive side of it. So that's essentially what it is. It's customer-centric. There's a lot of new work on design thinking. It's very popular now. We have, for instance, a PhD, Lindy Schultz, working on service innovation and design thinking, which is quite unique and different and very relevant in terms of where we are right now.
That's fantastic. Now, Rachel, can I maybe ask this question of you? Because we've been talking about businesses that are in this COVID crisis at the moment, and business rescue obviously happens before the crisis as well. But we now look at businesses as they move forward. We have a question: will Ster-Kinekor survive post-lockdown? So I'm going to start with you, and then maybe if anybody else wants to add their views. I love movies, so please tell me yes.
It's a difficult question, Marius, because we don't have a crystal ball. But what is important to know in our industries, we see that a lot of industry boundaries are actually merging, and the boundaries are actually fading. So your ecosystems are becoming quite important. So you have to know who you can collaborate with, the suppliers of the suppliers. If you think of Ster-Kinekor, they have content providers. They have a pipeline of quality, a pipeline of content providers, and then they exhibit the films. Now, their competition is directly, would typically be Netflix, who's definitely advantaged by this situation. We're in now Netflix and Apple TV and DSTV in South Africa. So, and Showmax, those are the competitors at the moment. But I think the most critical part for Ster-Kinekor is not to be fixed in a fixed identity. It's important to rethink who you are. Alex has spoken about that your value, you have to rethink the product and where the value accrues. So what is it that your customer value? It's not necessarily the movie that they value now. It is the whole experience of sitting in a movie theater and being treated. And unfortunately, that is now negatively affected by the social distance. So for Ster-Kinekor to survive, they will have to think of new networks, of the new ecosystem. They will have to work with competitors and collaborate. So no longer just competing, but collaborating and thinking about their business in a brand new way.
So maybe drive-in theaters is the new way to go. Gives us good social distancing. Anybody want to? So our next question actually dovetails off of this. So how do industries plan to cope with conditions post-COVID-19? How will they have to reposition themselves? And I'd love to hear the viewpoints of the panel.
Yeah, Marius, maybe I must start here to say there's a big portion of sense making required. What is happening to your customer? The customer that you had pre-COVID is different to the customer that you have post-COVID or mid-COVID. I would prefer to speak about mid-COVID. I don't know what post-COVID is going to look like. Although it might be the same person, that person might now have a different spending intent. Where are they going to spend their money? And if we talk about the movies is a nice thing to have. But if you have lost your job You will hardly be able to go to the movie anyway. So you have to understand what really happened to your customers and what are you doing for your customer and where is their spending priority going to be in the future. And unless you can understand that, you cannot really apply strategic thinking in order to follow that process.
Marius,
Yeah.
I would also just like to say, I think post-COVID, we have to consider the trends that are emerging at the moment in our industries. There might be trends that are just now emerging because of COVID, but there might be trends that outlive COVID. So, for instance, it has been said that e-learning will be part of our mainstream offering in 2030. But we've seen that that trend has now been accelerated by the COVID pandemic, and our e-learning has become quite prominent. So that trend has accelerated. That's an area where organizations an industry that organizations could consider. NASPAT has already signaled in the media that they are considering that particular market as an management system provider, the system provider for e-learning. There could be companies that consider the content part of e-learning, and there might be trends in your organization, for instance, this online webinars or online meetings that you might feel is more efficient than actually flying your team members from one province to another. So that might also be a trend that outlive the pandemic, and that we should consider when we think of the future of the industries that we work in.
Rachel, I think to add on to that is that we've got obviously, the movie industry that's being disrupted. We've got education that's been disrupted. Another field is gyms. How much business are the gyms going to be able to recoup after this, after the people have been able to work out at home for the last couple of months? I mean, in business, we talk about the dangers of having a stock out and having customers, play around with competitors' products and then having, a dropout with regards to them coming back. But this can also apply in regards to whole industries now after post lockdown, is that people might now have their entire behaviors changed and industries will be negatively affected and others obviously positively affected.
Yeah. Can I come in here as well, please?
Absolutely.
Quite an interesting coincidence, the late Clayton Christensen, I think any business person knows him, with his disruptive innovation, coining that term, but in his work, The Prosperity Paradox, it's so relevant now because he mentioned there that we can't fix poverty, and we'll see more and more poverty due to this. We're not fixing it. But it will come from investing in innovations that create new markets. And I'm very interested in this trend, like what Rachel mentioned there. We are creating and will create new markets here. And one thing one has to look into is the principle where entrepreneurs should embrace, especially entrepreneurs, looking into, for instance, changing expensive products into more affordable by capturing, like you said, the non-consumer. And we have very good examples already of companies who make masks for 10 Rand, sell it for 10 Rand with the same value than a mask for 80 Rand. We have a small clothing factory in Mamelodi, part of our Mamelodi Business Clinic and Incubator, who can provide a low-cost mask at a very much lower margin, but a lower price as well to a high-end market. But they're hampered by the supply chain obstacles and so on, but also non-realizing corporate orders and so on. But it's a new market for them. It's a brilliant new entrepreneurial opportunity as well. We also have a last example is in the service industry, where photographers are doing live funeral streaming, which is a new trend, and due to physical distancing, an opportunity making money out of it as well.
Absolutely. So, deviating from the formal questions, I think there's a great question that's been posed for us. So what resilience should be built into organizations to be better prepared for future hardships, if possible at all? And Reba, if we can maybe start with you or Rachel.
Reba, would you like to start?
You can start and I'll weigh in.
All right. In terms of resilience and the flexibility that we should build into organizations, I think it's important that we rethink the way that we implement a strategy. I've read recently about the Bank of America that is now rotating their staff members in the organization. So instead of having a fixed job, they actually now have what they call mission critical projects, and the staff members can actually tender their skills on a particular project. So your organization becomes a marketplace and no longer fixed in positions, because positions have changed and jobs have changed, but you rotate a position and you work on a project. So you break a project down into mission critical tasks. So that is rethinking your organization. Also, flexibility, building a more flexible workforce is important. I've been told this morning of a company called recruitmymom.co.za. It's a company that was started by an entrepreneur called Philippa Geard. And what she did was to say that a lot of women, female workers, actually leave the formal workforce after they've become mothers, but they have the skills and they've got the abilities. So she started a recruitment agency focusing on the moms out there who'd like to work from home. Previously, we've been a bit reluctant to think of a flexible workforce working from home, and we were all fixed in this mindset of working 8 to 5 or 8 to 4. But now we've seen that it's actually workable. It's a situation in our businesses that can work. We can have flexibility. We can work at different hours, and we can focus on something new. So that kind of flexibility is quite critical. The first thing in building resilience is getting rid of the inertia in organizations. So how do we change our mindset? Now, there are different ways of doing that. One way is what they call the bean way. You build certain behaviors, BE for being. So for instance, you have a checklist of the things that you want. And our university, one new behavior that we wanted was a few years ago was to change to a research intensive university, because we are ranked according to that. So our behavior enablers was looking at how many articles is published by each academic every year. And then artifacts, that's the A in bean. Typically what you do now is you reward them. So there's a trophy and you say, yes, you've been the research of the year. And finally, you nudge them in that direction with the N. So it just helps you in terms of the changes, just to reinforce that behavior is by perhaps having a leaderboard or whatever. So we need to rethink, and we need to very specifically build in flexibility in organizations. It's not going to happen by itself. It is something that we have to think about, and like Reba says, it's a mind change, and it's that understanding and making sense, but then physically actioning it.
Right. So to just latch on to what Rahul has been saying about flexibility, what's important with flexibility is, first of all, be able to understand the context that you're operating in. Alex was referring to the masks that people are making. So people understand the environment that, okay, we are faced with a pandemic where people now need to protect themselves. But context is important. And, people prioritize certain things. So the mask for some people is not necessarily a necessity. Food is a necessity. So you need to understand the context when you're trying to bring in a specific product. So with context, then you build adaptability around how you do things and how you actually assist your consumers. And I was reading something this morning on how Apple is using sense making in trying to sell their products. And now Apple is generally seen as it's a premium product. But of course, these premium products, even though they are not necessity products, you still want to build your business. And, they addressed several things, and they said, when you try to almost change the process of thinking, there are 3 things you need to do. You need to identify what the problem is. So because we're now speaking about resilience, so identify so that you may actually be able to relate to your consumers. So it's again that context thing that we're speaking about. And then there needs to be an almost subconscious switch in terms of your mind. You must alter the way in which you see things and the way in which you think. So with that, it's about bonding with the consumer. And then finally, it's the reenactment. So it's not just about identifying, relating, understanding context, understanding business principles, and understanding the environment. It's about what are the actions that you're going to do in order to, or how are you going to change your actions in order to ultimately then build this resilient business. So resilience is a lot about understanding the context. It's about being able to relate to your audience, but about implementing change that's actually going to actually make a difference, especially if we're thinking about it in the South African context. I hope I was able to answer the question effectively.
That was a great question. So I think that if we look at what's been happening around the COVID crisis, I think informal traders had face masks. One day after the lockdown was announced, they were so well prepared and so able to quickly turn on a dime, as the expression goes, to take advantage of the opportunities. And Hi My Mom is another great example, because it just shows you how technology now enables our world to take that leap forward and to connect opportunity to the availability of resources. But just taking a quick step back, Professor Alex, if you can perhaps explain what a turnaround strategy is quickly, and what does it entail? You're on mute. Sorry.
I think it's more Marius and Wesley Field. They will know. I'll be creative and just focus on innovation as part of turnaround. It's most definitely not only that, but it is a big component of turnaround. They know all the red flags in the process and also the process as such. So maybe Marius, can you just quickly give us a run through in terms of the process?
Yeah, if we look at the process, there are various phases in a turnaround process. The first one is that you must understand what is your situation, the turnaround situation. For that, you need to do some analysis. You have to really understand where you are coming from, what caused the distress, how severe is the distress, what is the origin of the distress. And unless you understand those things, you cannot go to the next phase. But basically, the next phase would entail what we call retrenchment as a phase, where and retrenchment is not a case of retrenching people, it's retrenching of the use of resources. And then there's the entrepreneurial phase that follows on that, to say, where are we now going and starting and doing this and making choices of what we have to do and what we don't have to do. So it's basically a three-phase process. But that first one, if you get that wrong for the specific business, because every business is unique, then you're missing the point. You cannot apply generic things, although they exist. They must be specific to that business. And I think that's in short, by the time that we have left, that I will end there.
Perfect.
Maybe I can add just to that is that, also a nice definition for turnaround is that businesses have ups and downs. It's the normal course of running any business. The distinction between running a business through its ups and downs and turnaround is that the nature of decline is that the ordinary management cannot stem the decline of the business. You need external intervention to take place. So either that's in an informal matter or a formal matter through a business rescue practitioner, you need that external intervention to get the company back onto track. So a lot of people think that when a company is severely distressed, that the management of the company can simply implement its own turnaround strategy. Well, typically you want to avoid that. You want external intervention of some kind, because internally this has kind of resulted in the company, in most times the company being where it is.
Perfect. That's a wonderful response. We've got so many questions that have streamed in. We probably need another half an hour. So I think, with your permission, we're going to take all of these questions and we're going to pose them to you after this session. If you can help us draft some questions, and then we can give all of our listeners, all of our viewers, FAQ that they can refer back to together with more information. I want to finish off on two last things. So the first thing is, Alex, if you can maybe very quickly just talk to us about the SMME portal.
Okay, I'll try to be quick. I think Prof. Kupi mentioned our centenary celebration of Faculty of Economic and Management Sciences. And due to that, we thought mid-March, somewhere, Wesley and myself, that we have to jump in because the global effect of COVID is showing and affecting business. Let's help our SME sector as well. And via our Center for Entrepreneurship, we set up a online portal for any SME in South Africa. And it essentially offers, the core service is professional assistance. And we have about 400 now professional specialists offering free services to our SMEs. I'll give the categories now. And these services are normally and were normally unaffordable for entrepreneurs. As we know, they mentioned that the turnaround and rescue process, how expensive that is. So we have a number of accountants, financial management specialists. We have a very big group of psychologists. As we know, the mental impact is severe. We have lawyers, tax practitioners, ICT specialists, digital marketing, supply chain, communication management, rescue and turnaround practitioners, HR, and many more. And also have to add a number of business advisors and mentors. We were quite busy at this stage. We 2.5 weeks into since the soft launch of the portal, and we had more than 8,000 visitors on the portal already. We're very busy, and we see a number of trends. And this sector is really in distress, and the kind of questions we see is interesting and not unexpected though. So anyone, two sides. The one is any specialist who want to offer free services, whether it's just 1 hour a week up to 10 hours a week, please register on our site as a volunteer. We do vetting, we do an investigation whether this is real and whether you have credentials and so on. And then any entrepreneur, whether you work in a garage, whether you sit in your office and work, whether you have a factory of 200 employees, please ask the portal. There are many and a lot of help for you. And these guys offer it for free. So we have to have this as a program and not a project to assist this sector in distress.
That is absolutely incredible and well done on such an amazing initiative. As an SME, I'm certainly going to go have a look and draw from the experience. An hour has flown by. We're going to finish off, as I said, all of the questions that everybody has posted. We're sorry we couldn't get to every question. Those we haven't answered, we'll add it onto an FAQ together with a link to the SMME portal, as well as those 12 questions that were mentioned around the FAST method. We'll add all of those into an FAQ and share it with everybody afterwards. I want to close off from our panelists just saying thank you. And I'm going to ask each of you to give us one final remark on the last question. What should small business owners in South Africa be looking to do and focus on strategically over the next, and it says 3 to 5 years, I'm going to say over the next year in order to remain relevant. So we're going to start with Alex, then Rachel, Reba, Marius, and Wesley.
Start realizing you are creative. All of you are creative. Apply that. Think new, think different. And most important, ask. That's why we have that portal, ask. Even when you panic, we have psychological help. When you have marketing assistance, if you don't have a website or online presence, please ask. That's what we should do right now.
My final remark, in this period of liminality where we are between a past that is gone forever and a future that is quite uncertain, we need to use the downtime to rethink our business, to rethink our organizational identity for big corporates, and to think about where we are going in this future. What can we do new? How can we reimagine our future and what we want to do? Maybe we can revive a project that has been on the back burner. We didn't have time for that project, but maybe we'd like to start with something brand new. But this is the time, this downtime is the time to start and think fresh and new about your business.
Thank you.
So I would like to say Thank you. I'd like to say use that creativity to try and build resilience and to think about new opportunities. So wherever there's a problem, try to be solution orientated. And very important is, I think, work well together, collaborate with your competitors or what would typically be your competitors. I think collaboration is very important because with collaboration, you learn a lot and you might be able to find gaps or solutions to gaps that you didn't really think about. So I'd say work well together, build relationships, be creative, be adaptable. Perfect.
Marius?
From my side, I would like to say, if you want to build up a resilient company, you have to be aware of what's going on around you, especially with all the disruptors that are appearing. Some were on the horizon, some are in our midst at the moment. Once you are aware of them, you can prepare. So that's the next step. Awareness, preparedness, and then you have to take the right actions. You don't have to just talk about it. You have to take the right actions, which is the difficult part of making you after you've made your choices. So to be a resilient company or to become resilient, that is how you would have to approach it.
I think from my side, for small businesses, just remember that when industries are disrupted, small businesses have the advantage of being able to adapt faster and are more agile. So you're best placed to take advantage of many of the opportunities that are going to arise post-lockdown. I think something that we've also learned from hosting the support portal is that there is a lot of help out there. Ask for help. The business community is willing to support businesses. Talk to your suppliers, talk to Greater Business, and you will be surprised how supportive everyone is.
Amazing. Everybody, thank you so much for this session. We appreciate all your valuable inputs. We look forward to delving more into these subjects in the FAQ and in the documents we're going to share later on. A reminder to all of our amazing alumni and viewers, thank you so much for taking out an hour of your evening to spend the time with us as we delve into this session. Our next LeadUP event is going to be on the 17th of June at 2:00 South Africa time. We're going to be focusing on COVID-19 and the implications for food security in Africa. So please join us. We'll be putting the event on the University of Pretoria LinkedIn page tomorrow. And then today's event, as well as future planned events, are all brought to you by the Alumni Relations team. So thank you, Sam, who did that welcome for us in the beginning. We want to hear your opinion about this event and whether you think it was informative. So our last poll for the night is on Slido. Please tell us whether you would refer this event to your business colleagues or other alumni, with 1 being very unlikely, 10 being extremely likely. Professor Coupe, from our side as well, thank you very much for the words of welcome and the introduction and the beginning of the evening. We hope you have a beautiful evening and the rest of the week. So thank you everybody for joining us tonight, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Marius. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Prof. Coupe, and especially Sam for this initiative. I think it's high impact.